I suppose I should have seen it coming, but love has a way of blinding you to the cracks in the foundation. My name's Daniel, and I'd been married to Claire for 12 years. We met in college, her with her wild auburn curls and that laugh that could light up a room, me with my quiet determination and a knack for fixing things. She was a painter, an artist through and through, and I was an engineer, always tinkering, always building. We were opposites in so many ways, but it worked. At least I thought it did. Our life in Portland was comfortable. Our little house with its creaky floors, the garden she tended, the workshop where I spent my weekends. We had no kids, just a scruffy mutt named Jasper who'd bark at the mailman like it was his sacred duty. Life was good, or so I believed. It started with small things. Claire began spending more time at her studio downtown. She'd always been passionate about her work, but these late nights felt different. She'd come home with paint smudged on her cheek, her eyes distant, like she was still lost in some other world. I'd ask how her day went, and she'd give me these vague, dreamy answers. "Oh, just lost in the canvas," she'd say, brushing me off with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I didn't push. I trusted her. That was my first mistake. Then there were the phone calls. She'd step outside to take them, her voice low and muffled through the glass door. I'd catch snippets, laughter, a softness I hadn't heard directed at me in a while. When I asked who it was, she'd say, "Just a gallery owner," or "Someone interested in my work." I wanted to believe her. I did believe her. But doubt is a seed, and once it's planted, it grows roots you can't ignore. One night, she didn't come home. She texted me around midnight, "Staying at the studio. Big project deadline." I stared at that message for an hour, my thumb hovering over the reply button. Jasper whined at my feet, sensing something was off. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in the dark, the hum of the refrigerator my only company, wondering why my wife felt so far away even when she was just across town. The next morning, she waltzed in like nothing was wrong, her hair messy, her clothes wrinkled. She smelled faintly of turpentine, and something else, something musky, unfamiliar. "Morning, babe," she said, pecking me on the cheek before heading to the shower. I stood there, coffee cup in hand, feeling like a stranger in my own home. That was when I knew. Not the details, not yet, but the truth was clawing its way to the surface. My wife was slipping away, and I wasn't sure I could stop it. I'm not a suspicious man by nature. I fix things, bridges, engines, leaky pipes, problems with clear solutions. But this was a puzzle with pieces I couldn't see. After that night she didn't come home, I started paying attention. I noticed the way she'd tilt her phone away when she typed, the way she'd linger in the bathroom with the door locked, the way her excuses piled up like leaves in autumn. Meeting a client, running errands, need to clear my head. Each one chipped away at the trust I'd built over a decade. I decided to follow her. It wasn't a plan so much as a compulsion. One Tuesday, she said she was heading to the studio after dinner. I nodded, kissed her goodbye, and watched her car pull out of the driveway. Then I grabbed my keys, told Jasper to hold down the fort, and tailed her. My heart pounded as I kept a safe distance, her taillights flickering through the Portland drizzle. She didn't go to the studio. Instead, she turned down a street I didn't recognize, parked outside a sleek, modern house with floor-to-ceiling windows. I pulled over a block away, my hands trembling on the steering wheel. She didn't knock. She let herself in with a key. A key. My wife had a key to someone else's house. I sat there, engine idling, watching the lights flick on inside. Shadows moved behind the glass, hers and someone taller, broader. They stood close, too close. My stomach twisted into knots. I wanted to storm in, demand answers, but my body wouldn't move. I just watched, frozen, as the life I'd known unraveled through those windows. I don't know how long I sat there, maybe an hour, maybe two. When she finally came out, her hair was tousled, her jacket slung over her arm. She looked satisfied, happy even. She drove off and I followed her back home, my mind racing. Who was he? How long had this been going on? And why hadn't I seen it sooner? When she walked through our door, She smiled at me like nothing had happened. "Good night at the studio?" I asked, my voice steady despite the storm inside. "Yeah," she said, yawning. "Really productive." I nodded, said nothing, and went to bed beside a woman I no longer recognized. His name was Ethan. I found out 2 days later, thanks to a receipt she'd left in her coat pocket. Ethan's Coffee Roasters, it read, with a scribbled note on the back. "See you tonight." Beautiful. The handwriting wasn't hers. I stared at that note for a long time, the paper crinkling in my fist. Ethan. I didn't know him, but I needed to, so I did what any engineer would do. I researched. A quick search online revealed Ethan Caldwell, a local architect, mid-40s, single, with a reputation for designing eco-friendly homes. His face popped up in articles. Sharp jawline, dark hair, a smug smile that made me want to punch something. I dug deeper. His address matched the house I'd seen her enter. His social media was full of artsy photos, sketches, buildings, coffee cups. And then, buried in the comments, I found her. "Claire. Love this design," she'd written under one of his posts months ago. He'd replied with a winking emoji. Months ago. This wasn't new. This had been festering under my nose while I fixed faucets and mowed the lawn. I started piecing it together. They'd met at an art gallery event last spring. She'd mentioned it in passing, some networking thing. I hadn't gone. I had a deadline at work. That was the seed. From there, it grew. Late-night collaborations. Stolen moments. A key to his house. My house, our life, was just a backdrop to her real story now. I felt sick, but I couldn't stop. I needed proof, something concrete to confront her with. That night, I waited until she was asleep, her breathing soft and even beside me. I slipped out of bed and took her phone from the nightstand. No passcode. She'd always trusted me not to snoop. The irony wasn't lost on me. I opened her messages. There he was, with a string of texts that made my blood run cold. "Missed you today. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. You're my muse." My muse. She was my wife and he was calling her his muse. I scrolled further, found photos, her laughing in his kitchen, him kissing her cheek. My hands shook so hard I nearly dropped the phone. I put it back, exactly as I'd found it, and lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling. Jasper patted over, nudging my hand with his wet nose. I scratched his ears, grounding myself. She'd betrayed me, not just with her body, but with her heart. And I wasn't going to let it slide. The next morning, I played my part. I made coffee, kissed her forehead, asked about her day like nothing was wrong. She chattered about a new painting, oblivious to the rage simmering beneath my calm exterior. I'd always been good at hiding my emotions. Years of troubleshooting complex systems taught me patience, precision. But this wasn't a machine I could fix. This was my life, and it was broken beyond repair. Still, I smiled, nodded, and planned. Revenge wasn't a word I'd ever thought I'd live by, but it felt right now, like a tool I'd been handed to reclaim what was mine. I started small. I needed to know more. Every detail, every moment she'd spent with him. I installed a tracking app on her phone while she showered, syncing it to my laptop. It was easy, too easy, and part of me hated how good I was at this. By noon, I had her location, his house again. The dot blinked on my screen, mocking me. I pictured them together. Her hands on his chest, his lips on her neck, and my vision blurred with anger. But I didn't act. Not yet. I needed to be smarter than that. I drove to his place that afternoon, not to confront, but to observe. It was a quiet street, lined with trendy homes and overpriced cars. His house stood out, glass and steel, a monument to his ego. I parked across the street, slouched low in my seat, and waited. She came out an hour later, her scarf fluttering in the wind. He followed, pulling her back for a kiss. A long, lingering one that made my knuckles whiten on the steering wheel. They didn't care who saw. They thought they were untouchable. I took photos with my phone, zooming in on their faces, their hands, the way she leaned into him. Evidence. Not for a divorce lawyer. I wasn't ready to let her go that easily. But for something bigger. Something that would hurt them both the way they'd hurt me. That night, I pored over the tracking data. She'd been there 5 times in the past week, sometimes for hours. I cross-referenced it with Ethan's online calendar, public, because of course he was that arrogant. Client meetings, he called them. Liar. I didn't sleep. Instead, I sat in my workshop, surrounded by tools and blueprints, plotting. Revenge wasn't enough. It had to be cruel, calculated, a dismantling of their little fantasy. I'd take everything they cared about, his career, her art, their precious connection, and burn it to the ground. But first, I had to be sure. One more piece of proof, one more nail in their coffin. Claire's lies were a rhythm now, a predictable beat I could set my watch to. "Studio tonight," she said over breakfast, her eyes flicking to her phone. I nodded, sipping my coffee, tasting nothing but bitterness. "Have fun," I said, and she smiled, oblivious to the trap closing around her. I'd spent the night mapping her movements, cross-checking texts, building a timeline. Today I'd go further. I'd see it with my own eyes, not through a window, not through a screen, but up close. I needed to feel the weight of her betrayal, to fuel what came next. I called in sick to work, a rare move that raised no eyebrows. I was the reliable one, after all. Then I waited until she left, her car disappearing down the street. The tracker confirmed it, Ethan's house again. I drove there, my toolbox rattling in the back seat. I didn't plan to use it, not yet, but it felt right to have it, like a soldier carrying a weapon into battle. I parked 2 blocks away, pulled on a baseball cap, and walked toward his place. The neighborhood was quiet, the kind of quiet that hides secrets behind manicured lawns. His front door was unlocked. Arrogant bastard didn't even bother with security. I slipped inside, my boots silent on the hardwood. The house smelled of coffee and her perfume, a punch to the gut. I heard them upstairs, voices soft, laughter spilling down the stairwell. I crept closer, my phone recording every sound. The bedroom door was ajar, and there they were. Claire sprawled across his bed, him leaning over her, their clothes scattered like confetti. My breath caught, but I didn't falter. I filmed it, every murmured word, every touch, until I had enough. I left as quietly as I'd come, my heart a furnace of rage and purpose. Back home, I watched the footage over and over, until their faces were seared into my mind. This wasn't just infidelity. It was a performance, a mockery of everything I'd given her. 12 years reduced to this. But I wasn't broken. I was awake, and now I had the ammunition. That night, she came home late, humming to herself. "Good day," I asked, my voice steady. "The best," she said, kissing my cheek. I smiled back, imagining the reckoning to come. Step 1 was complete. Step 2 would be worse for them. The footage sat on my laptop like a loaded gun, a silent promise of what was to come. I didn't watch it again. Not because I couldn't stomach it, but because I didn't need to. Every frame was etched into my brain, a blueprint for the chaos I was about to unleash. Claire slept beside me that night, her breathing soft and untroubled, while I lay awake, plotting. Revenge wasn't just about confrontation. It was about precision, about dismantling their world piece by piece. I'd start with Ethan, his career, his pride, the foundation of his smug little life. Then I'd turn to her. She'd feel it last, when it hurt the most. I spent the next day in my workshop, Jasper curled up by the heater, his snores a quiet counterpoint to the storm in my head. I wasn't building anything physical this time, no engine, no shelf. I was constructing a plan. Ethan was an architect, a public figure in Portland's artsy, eco-conscious crowd. His reputation was everything: clients, awards, that insufferable smirk in magazine spreads. I'd seen his website, Ethan Caldwell Designs, sustainable living, inspired spaces. Inspired spaces, like the bedroom where he'd taken my wife. I'd make sure those spaces crumbled. I started with his clients. The tracking app on Claire's phone had given me dates, times, patterns. I cross-referenced them with Ethan's online portfolio and social media, every client meeting that overlapped with her visits. There were names, companies, projects. I made a list, Then I dug into his past, scouring public records, forums, anything I could find. It took hours, but I struck gold. A disgruntled former partner, a woman named Rachel who'd left a cryptic review on a job site 2 years back. Unprofessional, unreliable, don't trust him with your money or your spouse. She'd been burned too. I tracked her down through a mutual contact on LinkedIn, a vague message about shared experiences. She replied within an hour. We met at a diner across town, a greasy spoon where no one would recognize me. Rachel was sharp, mid-30s with a no-nonsense edge. Over coffee, she spilled it all. Ethan had seduced her while they collaborated on a project, then dumped her when a bigger client came along. He's a parasite, she said, stirring sugar into her cup. Feeds off people, then moves on. I didn't tell her everything, just enough. She hated him as much as I did. When I asked if she'd help me expose him, her eyes lit up. Oh, honey, she said. I've been waiting for this. That night, I came home to Claire painting in the living room, her canvas streaked with bold reds and blues. Beautiful, I said, meaning the lie I was weaving, not the art. She beamed, oblivious. I kissed her forehead and went to bed, dreaming of ruins. Rachel became my unlikely ally, a shadow partner in this slow unraveling. She had dirt, emails, photos, a paper trail of Ethan's shady deals. He'd cut corners on projects, overbilled clients, used his charm to smooth it over. He's sloppy when he's distracted, she said during our second meeting, sliding a USB drive across the table. And your wife? She's his latest distraction. I didn't flinch at that. I'd already accepted the truth. The drive held evidence, not just of his affair with Claire, but of professional misconduct. Enough to rattle his career, if not collapse it entirely. I spent days combing through it, cross-checking with my own findings. There were invoices for materials he'd never bought, timelines he'd fudged, clients he'd ghosted after cashing their checks. Rachel had kept it all, waiting for the right moment. I added my piece, the video, timestamped, showing him with Claire during a supposed site visit. Together, it was a story. Ethan Caldwell, the golden boy of sustainable design, was a fraud in more ways than one. I didn't care about the morality of it. I cared about the impact. I started small, planting seeds. Anonymous tips to local design blogs, vague enough to spark curiosity. Check Caldwell's billing on the Elm Street project. Ask about his client meetings in June. I used burner accounts, VPNs, tricks I'd picked up from late-night internet rabbit holes. Within days, whispers started online. A contractor commented on a forum. Heard he's a flake. Overpromised on my build. Then vanished. Another chimed in, same. Guys all talk. The ripples were subtle, but they were spreading. Meanwhile, Claire was none the wiser. She'd come home glowing, chattering about Ethan, never by name, but I knew. This architect I'm working with, he's brilliant, she'd say, her eyes alight. We're collaborating on something big. Collaborating. The word made my skin crawl, but I played along. Sounds exciting, I'd reply, pouring her wine, watching her sip it like she deserved it. She thought I was clueless, a supportive husband cheering her on. That was her mistake. By the end of the week, Ethan's name was trending locally, not for praise but for questions. A small article popped up, Portland architect faces scrutiny over project delays. It wasn't much, but it was a crack in his facade. I smiled for the first time in days, knowing it was just the beginning. The cracks widened faster than I'd expected. Ethan's clients, wealthy types who'd hired him for prestige, didn't like the smell of scandal. One pulled out of a high-profile condo project, citing concerns over reliability. Another demanded an audit of his invoices. I watched it unfold online, sipping coffee in my workshop while Jasper chewed a bone at my feet. Rachel texted me updates. He's freaking out. Called me yesterday, fishing to see if I'm behind it. She hadn't said a word, of course. We were ghosts, moving in the shadows of his crumbling empire. Claire noticed too, though she didn't connect it to me. Ethan's stressed, she said one night, picking at her dinner. Some nonsense online is messing with his work. I raised an eyebrow, feigning concern. What kind of nonsense? She shrugged, vague as always. Just rumors. Jealous people, probably. I nodded, hiding my smirk behind a forkful of mashed potatoes. Jealous people. If only she knew. Her worry for him fueled me. She cared enough to be rattled, which meant she'd feel the fallout when it hit her too. I escalated. Using the USB drive, I compiled a dossier, dates, amounts, screenshots of Ethan's flirty emails to Rachel overlaid with his padded bills. I sent it anonymously to a local investigative reporter, a guy named Mark Hensley who'd built a name exposing frauds. I included a teaser about personal indiscretions, but held back the video. That was my ace, and I wasn't ready to play it yet. Mark bit within hours, emailing back, "This is explosive. Can you meet?" I didn't. Anonymity was my shield. 2 days later, his story dropped. Eco-architect's green image tarnished by red ink. It was brutal, quotes from ex-clients, financial discrepancies, a photo of Ethan looking smug at some gala. The article didn't name Claire, but it didn't have to. She came home that night pale, her hands trembling as she poured herself a glass of water. "It's a mess," she muttered. "He doesn't deserve this." I wanted to laugh, to scream, but I just squeezed her shoulder. "He'll figure it out," I said, my voice a lie. His phone calls to her tripled that week. I saw them on the tracker. Desperate, probably. I imagined him pacing that glass house, blaming everyone but himself. Good. Let him squirm. Ethan's downfall was accelerating, and I was the invisible hand pushing him off the cliff. The article sparked a domino effect. More clients bailed. A trade association distanced itself, and his social media filled with snarky comments. "Eco-friendly fraud," someone called him. "All style, no substance," wrote another. I fed the fire, leaking snippets from Rachel's stash to forums and tip lines. Nothing traceable, just enough to keep the pressure on. His perfect little world was imploding, and I hadn't even touched Claire yet. That was the beauty of it. Her turn would come when she least expected it. She was distracted now, constantly checking her phone, biting her nails. A habit she'd kicked years ago. "He's losing everything," she said one morning, staring out the kitchen window. "It's not fair." I almost choked on my toast. Fair? She had no idea what unfair felt like. Not yet. I murmured something sympathetic, watching her unravel. She was in deep with him, deeper than I'd realized. It wasn't just a fling. It was a bond, a lifeline she'd tied herself to. That made it worse and better. Her pain would be exquisite when I cut it. I met Rachel again, this time at a park, away from prying eyes. She'd been tracking Ethan's moves too. He'd hired a PR firm to spin the story, claiming misunderstandings and overzealous competitors. "He's scrambling," she said, tossing a stick for her dog. "But it's too late. People smell blood." I handed her a burner phone with the video loaded, no audio, just the visuals. "Use it if you need to," I said. "But not yet." She grinned, tucking it into her bag. "You're a cold one, Daniel. I like it." That night, Claire went to his place again. I watched the trackers settle there, steady as a heartbeat. She was comforting him, no doubt, playing the loyal muse while his life burned. I didn't follow. I didn't need to. Instead, I sat in my workshop sketching the next phase. Ethan was half ruined, but Claire's art, her passion, her identity, was still intact. I'd take that too. I'd make her feel the emptiness she'd left me with. When she came home, she looked exhausted, her eyes red-rimmed. "Rough night?" I asked, casual as ever. "Yeah," she said, collapsing onto the couch. "Just a lot." I poured her a drink, handed it over with a smile. "You'll get through it," I said. Together, I didn't add. Ethan's collapse was a spectacle now, a slow-motion car wreck I couldn't look away from. The PR firm couldn't keep up. Another client sued him for breach of contract, and a second article hit, this one with photos of shoddy work on a sustainable build that was already leaking. His name was poison in Portland's design circles, his phone silent except for Claire's calls. I tracked them all, logging the late-night pleas, the frantic texts. She was his anchor now, and I was about to cut the rope. I turned my focus to her art. Claire's paintings were her soul, vibrant, chaotic, a window into the woman I'd once loved. She'd built a small following, galleries showing her work, collectors starting to notice. Ethan had been part of that, introducing her to his network, boosting her profile. It was their shared dream, their collaboration. I'd make it their shared nightmare. I started with her upcoming show, a solo exhibit at a trendy downtown gallery, set for next month. She'd been buzzing about it for weeks, framing pieces, planning the layout. I'd helped her hang lights in the garage to photograph them, playing the dutiful husband while plotting their ruin. The gallery owner, a wiry guy named Paul, was a friend of Ethan's, another connection I could exploit. I sent Paul an anonymous email from a throwaway account, attaching a still from the video. Claire and Ethan, tangled in his bed. "Your star artist and your disgraced architect," I wrote. "Good luck with the show." Paul didn't respond, but 2 days later, Claire got a call. I heard her side from the kitchen, her voice rising, then cracking. "What do you mean, postponed? This is my chance." She hung up, tears streaming, and turned to me. "The gallery's backing out. Something about reputational risks." She sank into a chair, devastated. I knelt beside her, stroking her hair. "That's awful," I said, my voice a mask. Inside, I was soaring. She didn't suspect me. She blamed Ethan's scandal, the toxic fallout, tainting her by association. Perfect. Let her think that. Let her cling to him while I tightened the noose. Claire's world was starting to fracture, and I watched it happen with a quiet satisfaction that surprised even me. The gallery cancellation hit her hard. She spent days moping around the house, her easel untouched, her usual fire dimmed. "It's not fair," she kept saying, her voice small, like a child who'd lost a toy. I'd nod, murmur comforts, bring her tea, all while the tracker on her phone showed her texting Ethan nonstop. "We'll figure this out," she wrote him. "I need you." Need. That word twisted in my gut, but it also sharpened my resolve. She needed him? I'd make sure she had nothing left to hold on to. I moved to the next phase, her reputation. Claire's art wasn't just her passion. It was her identity, her ticket to a world beyond our creaky little house. She'd built it carefully, piece by piece, and Ethan had helped her climb. Now I'd tear it down, not with a wrecking ball, but with a scalpel, precise, deliberate, leaving no room for recovery. I started with her collectors, the handful of wealthy eccentrics who'd bought her work. Using a fake email posing as a concerned art enthusiast, I sent them tips. "Heard Claire's tied up in that Caldwell mess. Might want to rethink her pieces." I attached a link to the latest article on Ethan's downfall, letting the association do the work. It didn't take long. One collector, a woman named Marjorie who'd paid $5,000 for a canvas last year, called Claire while I was in the room. I pretended to read the paper, listening as Claire's voice tightened. "No, that's not true. There's no connection, Marjorie, please." The line went dead, and Claire threw her phone onto the couch, her hands shaking. "She's selling my painting," she said, stunned. "She thinks I'm some kind of liability." I put the paper down, feigned shock. "That's ridiculous. Why would she think that?" Claire just shook her head, too lost to answer. I kept going. A few well-placed comments on art blogs, a whisper to a local critic who'd reviewed her last show. Nothing overt, just enough to plant doubt. Claire's work is lovely, but her judgment? Questionable. Too close to that architect fraud. The art scene is a small pond, and gossip spreads like ripples. Soon, her name was buzzing for all the wrong reasons. She didn't see my hand in it. She blamed Ethan, the press, the vultures circling his ruin. I let her. That night, she cried in my arms, her tears soaking my shirt. "I don't know what's happening," she whispered. "Everything's falling apart." I held her, stroking her hair, whispering back, "We'll get through it." The lie tasted sweet. Ethan was a ghost of himself now, and I reveled in it. His projects were dead, his clients gone, his name a punchline in Portland's creative circles. I'd check his social media, Once a stream of sleek designs and smug selfies, now silent except for the occasional desperate post about resilience and new beginnings. No one bought it. Rachel texted me updates. He's drinking a lot. Barely leaves the house. Good. Let him rot there, surrounded by the glass walls I'd shattered. But Claire. She still ran to him, still clung to their sinking ship. That was fine. It made the next step easier. Her art career was teetering, but she hadn't given up. She started talking about a new plan. A pop-up show. Something small to reclaim her narrative. She spent hours on the phone with Ethan, plotting, their voices a faint hum through the walls when she thought I was asleep. I listened, tracked, waited. The show was set for a warehouse space in 2 weeks, rented cheap from a friend who hadn't yet caught wind of the scandal. She was pouring everything into it, her savings, her energy, her hope. Perfect. I'd let her build it up, then watch it burn. I enlisted Rachel again. She had contacts, grubby, under-the-table types who'd do anything for a few bucks. I didn't ask for details. I just gave her cash and a goal. Sabotage the show. Nothing dangerous, I said. Just messy. She grinned, her eyes glinting. I know a guy. Paint cans, bad timing. It'll look like an accident. I didn't care how she did it, as long as Claire's big moment turned to ash. Meanwhile, I kept up the pressure online. More whispers, more doubts, ensuring no one worth a damn would show up. Claire was frantic, buzzing around the house with sketches and lists. This could fix everything, she told me one night, her smile fragile but real. A fresh start. I smiled back, pouring her wine. I'm proud of you, I said, and she hugged me, oblivious to the blade I was sharpening. Jasper watched from the corner, his tail wagging slow, like he knew something was off but couldn't place it. The night before the show, she stayed late at the warehouse, setting up. I tracked her. Ethan was there too, helping their little team against the world. I sat in my workshop, sipping whiskey, imagining the chaos to come. The pop-up show was Claire's last stand, and I made sure it was a disaster. Rachel's guy came through, sometime after midnight. A pipe burst in the warehouse, flooding the space with water and paint thinner from a carelessly stored can. By morning, her canvases were ruined, colors bleeding, frames warped, her dreams drowned in a sticky, chemical mess. She called me from the scene, sobbing so hard I could barely understand her. It's gone, Dan. Everything's gone. I drove down, played the shocked husband, held her as she stared at the wreckage. Ethan was there too, pale and useless, muttering apologies to no one in particular. The few people who showed up, mostly curious locals, left quickly, whispering about cursed luck and bad vibes. Claire sat on a crate, her hands stained with ruined paint, her eyes hollow. I don't know how this happened, she said, over and over. I knelt beside her, my arm around her shoulders. It's not your fault, I lied. Ethan tried to comfort her too, his hand brushing hers, and I fought the urge to shove him into the muck. Instead, I watched them cling to each other, their shared despair a twisted kind of poetry. Back home, she shut down. No painting, no talking, just staring at the walls like they held answers. Ethan stopped coming up in her conversations. He was a liability now, a weight dragging her deeper. I kept the pressure on him too, leaking the video stills to a sleazy tabloid site. No names, just enough to stir speculation. Disgraced architect's mystery woman. The art crowd connected the dots, and Claire's phone stopped ringing. Galleries, friends, collectors, all gone. She was a pariah by association, and I'd made it happen without ever raising my voice. She started drinking more, her mornings sluggish, her nights restless. I've lost everything, she said one evening, her glass trembling in her hand. I sat across from her, calm as ever. You've still got me, I said, and she nodded, too broken to see the irony. That night, I finalized the last step. Ethan was next. His ruin wasn't complete until he had nothing left to crawl back to. Ethan's house was his last bastion, that glass and steel shrine to his ego. I'd taken his career, his reputation, his connection to Claire. Now I'd take his sanctuary. Foreclosure rumors were already swirling. He'd missed payments, his income dried up. But I wasn't waiting for the bank. I wanted him out now on my terms. I'd learned a trick from an old engineering buddy. Nothing illegal, just creative. A small device, a signal jammer, could mess with smart homes like his. Lights flickering, heat shutting off, security glitching. Subtle, maddening, enough to push a man already on the edge. I built it in my workshop, a simple thing, wires, a battery, a cheap transmitter. Late one night, I drove to his street, parked a block away, and walked the jammer to his property line. I hid it in a bush, flipped the switch, and left. By morning, his social media was a rant. Power's out again. This house is a nightmare. I smiled, picturing him shivering in the dark, alone. Claire wasn't there to save him anymore. She'd stopped going, stopped answering his calls. The jammer ran for days, draining him, until a for sale sign went up. He couldn't afford it, couldn't fix it, couldn't stand it. I saw him once after that, loading a U-Haul, his face gaunt, his swagger gone. He didn't notice me watching from my car. Didn't know the man he'd wronged had orchestrated every blow. Claire heard about it too. Someone texted her, and she just stared at the message, silent. "He's leaving," she said finally, her voice flat. "Good riddance," I replied, and she didn't argue. Their bond was severed, a thread I'd snipped with patience and precision. Back home, I dismantled the jammer, scattered the parts. No evidence, no trail. Claire was a shell now, her art gone, her lover gone, her spirit gone. I'd stripped her bare, left her with nothing but me. And that was the cruelest cut of all. She started sleeping all day, barely eating. "I don't know who I am anymore," she whispered one night, curled on the couch. I sat beside her, my hand on her knee. "You're my wife," I said, and she closed her eyes, too tired to fight the truth. The house was quiet now, a tomb for the life we'd once had. Claire drifted through it like a ghost, her auburn curls limp, her laughter a memory. She'd stopped painting entirely, her studio downtown sat empty, the lease unpaid. I'd won, but victory tasted like ash. I'd dismantled their world, Ethan's career, Claire's art, their stolen moments, and left them both in ruins. He was gone, vanished to some nowhere town, and she was here, trapped with me, a shadow of the woman I'd loved. I kept up the act, the supportive husband tending to his broken wife. I cooked dinners she barely touched, walked Jasper alone, fixed things that didn't need fixing. She didn't suspect me, not once. The tracker was off her phone now, its purpose served. She had nowhere to go, no one to turn to. Friends had faded. Her art world had shunned her. And Ethan was a name she flinched at. I'd made sure of it. One evening, she found an old sketchbook, flipped through it, and started crying. "I used to be good," she said, her voice cracking. "What happened?" I sat beside her, took the book from her hands. "Life happened," I said, soft but firm. "But we're still here." She leaned into me, desperate for something solid, and I held her, knowing I'd hollowed her out. Jasper died that spring, old age, the vet said. Claire sobbed for days, the last piece of our old life slipping away. I buried him in the yard, her watching from the porch, a bottle in her hand. She didn't paint his grave, didn't sketch his memory. She just drank. I let her. Months passed, and she faded further, thin, quiet, a stranger in our home. I'd avenged myself, crushed them both, but the house felt heavier than ever. I'd wanted her to hurt, to feel my pain, and she did. But so did I. Revenge had rebuilt nothing. It had only cleared the ground, left me standing in the rubble. And yet I didn't regret it. They'd betrayed me and I'd made them pay. That was enough. One night, she looked at me, her eyes dull but searching. "Do you still love me, Dan?" I paused, then nodded. "Always," I said, and it wasn't a lie, just a truth twisted beyond recognition. She smiled faintly, closed her eyes, and I knew she'd never leave. Neither would I. We were bound now, not by love, but by the wreckage I'd wrought.